motion during regular session.
Motion is regular session, second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor. Come back to order. At this time, I can disclose because there was business that was conducted that we need now that we can bring before the public reference to some real estate. The first that we discussed was the highway property on 54 Highway, north side of town. There's the lot that fronts on 54 and borders on Sunset. We have been negotiating that property for a long time. We got them down to a figure that we feel like that we can live with. We have a contract signed with certain stipulations that we put under there, under the special steps that the bank has to handle prior to final closure. But at this time, I need a motion that we go forward with the contract as discussed.
Yes, I make a motion that we go forward with the contract.
Motion in a second. Now, we can go into any discussion on the property. The sales price for the property was $18,000. It is a bank foreclosure, and we feel like we got the property at a steal. Now, I'll also go into minutes details about why we felt like we needed that piece of property. Several years ago, on another piece of property on the south side of town, we had a Dollar General wanting to come in and set up the Dollar General store, and at that time it was in the Old Town zoning area, but we were not protected by zoning ordinances at that time, so we immediately threw up a moratorium against any building. That went on for almost a year, a little over a year, long enough for us to get our ordinances into effect. We found out that one of the executives with the dollar store is living in David Mullen's house, and that we had both received calls wanting to know how that property next door to him was zoned. We felt like if that property were not available to them, that they would go to the north side. So we're trying to protect the town and the old town integrity, the look, the feel that we have. And I'm not against dollar stores, that's fine, but I just don't want them in the historic district of Sharpsburg. Now, any further discussion on the contract in question?
No, sir.
Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by raised hand. The second piece of property is the property that I just alluded to on the south side. For 4, 5, 6 years now, I've been trying to buy that little triangle piece of property, the triangle formed by Terrentine and 54 Highway. I talked to Mr. Tom Reese several years ago. Mr. Reese talked him into buying the property and sharing that property with Sharpsburg, and he was going to donate that triangle to us. Unfortunately, Mr. Reese lost millions in the crunch. Along with it, he foreclosed on both of those two pieces of property, the triangle and the piece between triangle and David Mullen's house. I tried to negotiate with the bank for almost 6, 8, 10, I guess close to a year. The original selling price was in the 200,000 range, 220 or something. Negotiated it down to 100,000 on both pieces. Further negotiated it down with the bank to about 80,000. Found out that at the last minute we were going to have to go to auction to try to purchase this property. We knew that there was no reason in the world that we would be able to bid against a dollar store that wanted to buy those two pieces. So we were going to go to the auction last Wednesday, and hopefully whoever bought both pieces would sell us the triangle piece of property at a price that we could afford. Council gave the mayor the right to go in and negotiate that and try to purchase the property in the work session. So come to find out, miracles do happen. On Monday, prior to the auction on Wednesday, David Mullins called. He had just found out that Dollar Store was probably interested in that property next to his house. He felt like that the purchase of that, the Dollar Store would devalue his property, and he wanted to do something about it. At that time, we found out that the bank that was handling it, that I had been negotiating with for 6 or 7 months, was the bank that we had just moved all of our city business over to. So we called the vice president that came out here. He went in and acted on our behalf to try to get the price down from the $80,000 that we already had approved. The FDIC stepped in and said that they could not go beyond that low threshold, that was all that they would approve, that the banks, the lowest that they would sell it for was the $80,000. We got David Mullins to come back in, and David and I sat down and we made a deal that together we buy the two pieces of property and that the city would buy the triangle property. So we put out the $20,000 to buy the triangle. He put out the $60,000, totaling the $80,000, and we are now proud owners, I hope, of the triangle property. The intent of that property is to put a entrance into the city from the south side with our sign there in the triangle with flowers and so forth, and to clear out all the undergrowth so that when you come into Sharpsburg from the south side, you see a beautiful look rather than all that undergrowth and mess. David Mullins also agreed to lease us that big portion which we can use for the festival at the high rate of $1 per year, guaranteed for the next 2 years and maybe subsequently. He's also agreed that if the city wanted to buy that at any point, that he would sell it back to us at what he paid for it if we agreed not to sell it or dispose of it for something that would devalue the property, the value of his property. So all I can tell you is that fate stepped in at the last minute and I think saved us. However, even though I had prior authorization from council, I do need a motion at this time that the purchase go through as planned.
Make a motion.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion is second. Now, is there any further discussion? I know I talk fast, but let me tell you something, folks. That was a lot of putting together over a long period of time to make that come about. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by raised hand, and I thank you. At this time, I'll ask, is there any public comments about anything that we have discussed tonight or anything that you would like to discuss that haven't been up tonight, come up tonight?
I'd like to ask, we kind of talked earlier about when we could do a second session for the rezoning. You said because the first session might, or the second session might come into conflict with the July 4th holiday. I don't know if we could set up a meeting before then or if it would be postponed until after.
We would like to go ahead because I understand that both of you that came up tonight would like to see this done and done as quickly as possible. So I would suggest to council that we have another meeting this month, preferably it would have, I've got to be gone the second Monday to Savannah for the state GMA meeting. So it'd almost have to be sometime next week.
Okay.
I'll go over with council and go over with city clerk and see if we can make that happen for you.
Excellent, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Could I ask what is happening with the property across from the Shell gas station on the corner of Reese Road and Highway 54? Is there something planned to be built there?
Yes, ma'am. That property is part of the Pathways property that they're going to be, that will be commercial. The plans that they have for that property include a large grocery store, out parcels, all on that corner. It will be part of the residential complex that will come south all the way over to McIntosh Trail and southeast over to Reese Road.
Is there a time limit, our time?
I had lunch with them the other day and discussed it with them because we're interested from the standpoint of the sewer system. And all they will tell me for sure as the market will bear. However, I can tell you that they've been sitting there on that property paying high interest on it, on probably $8 million worth of property for 5 years now. They would like to see something happen. They cannot do anything with that property other than promises until that sewer plant is started or until they're given a time frame on the sewer plant. We're hoping that that's sooner or later. I also met with the engineers that are going to put in the sewer system, which will determine when that happens. I met with them 2 times within the last 3 weeks. They think that it'll happen and be on the ground within 2 years. That will be my desire also. Any other comments or questions? Ms. Garland?
Nothing.
Poll of council. Let's start over here. Anybody come to you with anything that we need to bring up in an open meeting?
No, sir. They hadn't called me.
Well, I don't see why they didn't come to see you.
Because I'm in a hostile territory.
Yeah. Sometimes we think we're in a hostile territory here. The clerk's not here, so she doesn't have any comments. Now, in the mayor's minutes, you might not want to listen to all this, but I got a lot of stuff to bring you up to date on if you'd like to hear it. All right, let's go. Let's start with Keith. I got him right up here at the top. And all I can tell you is that we're glad you're here in one piece.
Me too.
We sure do miss you. And I can tell you that our prayers are with you.
Thank you.
Library. If you've been by the library building in the last few days, you see that we've almost completed the siding on the outside. Now, I had to go a little bit against what we had talked about the library inside. It has been suggested that we have a door going into the bathroom from the library, inside the library. Now, once we get in there, we find out that first off, there's not enough room in there to open the door, much less open a door with a commode there. So, what we're doing, what my suggestion and what we're doing at this time, and I hope the council won't run me off, is that we're closing that bathroom as a bathroom, and it will be, the door will remain there because it's a great heavy door. That will be storage room come to from outside. The little storage room that was on the right, the south side of there, is 5 foot wide and approximately 12.5 foot long. We've cut a door from the inside over by where the gas stove was that is wide enough for handicap accessibility. The floor, however, once we got in there, the floor is about 18 inches lower than the floor of the library. So we're going to bring the floor up to the library. Now, the bad part about that is we would have to go to a tremendous amount of expense to raise that ceiling, raise the roof entirely. So what we're doing, it will be 6 foot at the lowest point back at the very back of the bathroom. And it'll be 6 foot 9.5 up at the other end. So plenty of height, most people wouldn't be a problem. So that's the way we taken care of the bathroom. Also, once we started removing the paneling from the inside, I didn't know it, but we had talked about putting shelves all the way across the back. Once we took the paneling off, the shelves were already there. We're not gonna have to put them. It was a library at one point. All that was shelves. So all we had to take out was one bank of shelves for the door going back into the bathroom. Any questions about that while I'm here? The building here, since we had the last meeting, obviously you can't walk in without seeing that we have put the stain on it, the council approved. And if you hadn't seen the foyer, go out and see that we put the vinyl on the floor there. All I can tell you, in my opinion, it looks fantastic. Yeah. Storage building, the metal storage building that we have in the parking lot, we had problems because the heat was building up, probably 120 degrees in there. I got a welder in here, and all the way back at the back, we cut a hole, welded it all solid, and put one of the big domes for vent, and we came to the front door back this way and cut a vent in the door and put some, to keep people from pulling the vent off and crawling in, we put some metal bars behind it. So now it has the flow-through ventilation, cut the temperature in now by about 40 degrees. I had a meeting the other day with the mayor of Turin, the Turin's attorney, IS&E Engineering, Mr. Dan Davis, who is representing us in their Peachtree City office. We come to an agreement that Dan Davis with IS&E, as I said, representing us, and Turin's engineer get together. First off is to establish a baseline. Where are we now with the water system? What needs to be done? When they can do it? Where the money's coming from to do it? All of our plans for the future, as far as the new subdivision, the new commercial area, is contingent upon water and sewer. Now, I think I've gone over with most of you the scenarios as to which way we can go, whether we go with Turin water, decentralized sewer, county water, decentralized sewer, county water, centralized sewer system, Turin water, centralized. We got so many options, but we have to find out where we stand on the water, because once we find out that, we'll know if we have to go to the county. If we have to go to the county, it's dictated to us that at that point, we can use a decentralized system, but if we use a decentralized system, we're going to have to pay the county all the impact fees that we will receive off of that property, plus they will keep us to the density of 1 house per acre. If we go with a centralized sewer system utilizing the Pathways sewer, which, as I said, I hope will be in 2 years. I met with their engineers. They gave us 2 design scenarios. One design scenario would be to have a forced main system. The forced main would pump the sewer from across the road up to 16. At that point, the city would take over. We'll bring it up 54 and down and tie onto the Pathways property at the corner of McIntosh and 54. However, that forced main system would cause us to have to put a grinder and a pump at every house in Sharpsburg, forcing the water to get over and hit the main to go down to the Pathways sewer. The second option would be to use a gravity system. This gravity system would cause the developer to have to put a pump in to force all the way to the top of the hill, go over 16, to 54, right at the end of Main Street. That's the point where, at that point, gravity would take over and go all the way down and connect on with the pathway system. Old Town and all the other developed area in Old Town Sharpsburg, and anybody in Wellsburg Station that's in the city that would want to tie on, would flow by gravity down to the end of Main Street, and at that point have a pump to pump it up to the top of the hill here at Main. From that point, it would be gravity on the rest of the way. In comparing the prices of the two, the gravity system is by far the cheapest way to go, but in the long run, by far the easiest way to go and the less liability, because the city would not be responsible for every one of those pipes of pumps and grinders at every house in the city. So that's the way we're looking at this time. In the meantime, we're making some temporary moves that we can't discuss in full because of the people involved, to put in a temporary system in Old Town, and I hope I'll be able to disclose those plans to you very soon. Any question on what I've talked about so far? And I apologize for talking so fast, but there's a lot of stuff.
I have no questions.
Public?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 2 weeks ago, I represented Sharpsburg at a meeting in Macon. We're fortunate to have our mayor is on the Legislative Policy Committee for the state, for the whole state of Georgia. There are about 40 people on that committee. That committee makes recommendations to the legislature for next season, things that we as the GMA, the small towns, the large towns, would like to see legislation passed. The night before the meeting, the next day, we did a lot of lobbying. We have been severely damaged in the past by the county not upholding their side of the service delivery agreement. Like right now, they're supposed to supply us with water. All in that annexed property over there is in their service delivery agreement. They signed a contract to that effect. However, they say, we're not going to give you water until you do everything we tell you to do. You're going to give us all the impact fees. You're going to do the density that we approve. They should have brought that out during annexation, but they did not. They did not object. However, they are using the water, just like they did with the Pathways property, as hostage. So, unless we do what they tell us, they're not going to give us water. Now, they are under legal contract to do so, so the state legislators say, you got to take it to court. County says, sue us, we don't care. But to sue them would cost us right at $100,000. We don't have that kind of money to spend for attorney's fees. So, we got together with GMA. GMA is going to introduce in next year's legislative session that says that the service delivery, any disagreements shall go before what is termed a baseball arbitrating committee, just like we would go if there's questions or disputes about annexation. So if they're in the wrong and they're supposed to be supplying us with water and they don't, the findings of the committee, the board is final, and they have to do it whether they like it or not. This is something that we would have loved to have had over the last 15 to 20 years, and it would have taken us out from under the thumb of the county a long time ago. So that was a good thing that happened at that meeting. I will be attending the state meeting week after next at Savannah. At that meeting, Sharpsburg will be receiving, has been verified and approved to receive the City of Ethics Award, and we'll be bringing that back home with us. The other day, we had the first meeting of the festival committee. Made some good preliminary plans. A lot of those plans, as you know, are predicated on whether or not we get the lease on the property. Met with Mr. Bridges last Friday. He's still trying to work it out. He says that he will get with the attorneys again today and tomorrow and should have us an answer back by the middle of the week on our lease. I've already been with you, talked to you about Constantine Engineering and the forced main system. Apologize for being so long-winded, but I'm trying to bring counsel, because Keith's not going to be here. These are the issues that he needs to know about so that we can talk to him about it on the phone until he gets back. Is there anything else that needs to come before council tonight? Any other comments from council?
Have none.
Hearing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.